Hello and welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and in this episode I'll be breaking down UFC 221 from Perth, Australia. So I've said previously I was trying to get a guest on for the podcast for every pay-per-view event, and we should have Amanda Jacobs on from Australia tonight. She heads up the featured section of the Newsome MMA website, but due to other commitments, unfortunately she couldn't be with us. I did ask around some other good friends from MMA Twitter that had never been on the podcast before, but I just think it was all a little too short notice. But I'm always trying to work hard to get some good people on here with me. So moving straight onto the fight breakdowns, as always, I've got my bets together. I'll be breaking those down in full for you. Anything else that's on the rest of the card, I'll just quick fire off at the end. So jumping straight into the first breakdown, I've got the first bet in the co-main event, which is Mark Hunt against Curtis Blaydes. Now, there's a lot that I really want to say about this fight, and it does stem more towards Mark Hunt rather than Curtis Blaydes. And I'm not going to delve too much into the political stuff that we might know about Mark Hunt, because this isn't what the podcast is about. It's a betting podcast, but the points I will make are relevant from a betting perspective. So I'm going to take it all the way back to just before the Brock Lesnar fight with Mark Hunt. So Mark Hunt was always one of them people that was vocally not happy about people popping from USADA and taking banned substances. You know, he made everyone quite aware of that. So obviously leading into the Brock fight, there was always that chance of that happening. Now, because Brock certified himself and took himself out the USADA pool, claiming he wasn't a fighter anymore when he went back to the WWE, when he came back to fighting, he had to enter the pool again, which I believe you have to have 6 months worth of testing before you can start fighting and before you get your license back. So Brock should have had that. I can't say whether he did or not, but anyway, the fight went on. We know what happened. Brock just laid and prayed for 3 rounds and beat Mark Hunt by decision. Then after that fight, Brock Lesnar got popped by USADA, and that's when it really all kicked off with Mark Hunt, even more vocally, saying some things that he shouldn't have been saying, even though they might have been right, they might have been wrong, depending on your opinion, but coming out on social media and making certain comments that he probably shouldn't have done towards the UFC and Dana White. But then, Dana White gave him other fights. He fought Alistair Overeem, he got knocked out. He fought Derek Lewis, and he beat Derek Lewis by TKO. But then he was due to fight Marcin Tybura in, I think it was Australia. Now, he ended up getting pulled from that fight. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before the event, because he published an article, if I remember rightly, something like, "If I die fighting, that's fine." And in that article, he was talking about certain health issues and consequences from him fighting during a long career. And he was mentioning things like slurring his speech and having loss of memory, which apparently are early signs for CTE, which is serious trauma to the head, I believe. So after the UFC heard this, they pulled Mark Hunt from the card, and Hunt went absolutely crazy, probably even worse than what happened after Lesnar. And the reason why is because apparently the doctors had cleared him to fight, but I suppose as a company, the UFC are looking at it thinking, well, if this guy's showing early signs of serious trauma to the head, then it's sort of, in my opinion, it was probably the right thing to do. But what Mark Hunt was saying was that the UFC are still punishing him for the stuff that happened after the Lesnar fight, because he was requesting all of Lesnar's fight purse from that night, I believe. So Hunt is still thinking that he's being hard done by the UFC, and that they are still trying to punish him for causing a scene, so to speak. Now, he was saying even worse things, and I am surprised he's actually still in the UFC, to be honest. And I'm surprised he's got a job, because the things that he was saying about Dana White, which essentially is his boss, he's lucky. Like I say, he's lucky that he's still got a job. That's just my opinion. But the reason why I believe this is relevant is because the first thing that I think of in this fight with Curtis Blaydes is, where's Hunt's head at? has he got one foot out the door? He's clearly pissed off with the UFC and probably pissed off with life. So, how much motivation has he got to go out there and put on a stellar performance at the highest level and pull off a win against a young athletic guy? And I've heard two different articles lately from Hunt, from the media, so you never really know what's true. But one side, I've heard that he doesn't want to be fighting by 2019, which you would probably assume, if that's true, he might have 1 or 2 fights left, because I can't see him fighting a lot throughout 2018 at this stage in his career. But then I read an article that he wants to fight better opponents, he wants to fight higher ranked opponents, which to me shows that, if that's true, that he's got aspirations to keep going on and to perhaps stay in the UFC. So I can't really read too much into any of those, because I don't know which one's true. But ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if he had 1 foot out the door, and he was ready to move on to do something else, just because of the pure fact that the relationship with the UFC and Dana White has broken down so badly. So that's the mentality side of Hunt. So then moving on to, this is a stylistic matchup. I just think he's in a really bad spot here. Hunt's the older fighter. He's been in so many wars, a lot of wars that he's won, but he's also got quite a few losses on his record as well. I think he's the slower fighter. I'm not sure what he's got outside of the one bomb walk off KO, and trust me, if it's not just Blaydes, if he hits anybody with that one shot, that one big powerful shot, he's putting him out. But the fact that he's getting older, and he's in that article he's published, he's having some problems as well. I just don't know. I just don't think he's in a very good spot here. And then moving on to Curtis Blaydes, you've got a young, exciting prospect in the UFC. I genuinely think he's got a bright career, and one of the reasons why I think he's got a bright career in the heavyweight division is because of his wrestling. He's got powerful double leg takedowns. He does look for the takedowns in pretty much every fight. He's got an average takedown per fight, I think it's around the 5 mark, so it's roughly around 5 takedowns every fight. And he's got that old school blast double as well. And I'm not saying he's going to hit Mark Hunt with a blast double leg takedown, because Hunt is difficult to take down, and only few men have actually managed to do it. But these are just reasons why I think Blaydes is going to be one of the best fighters in the division in the future. He's just got a different style. There's not really anybody quite like him currently on the roster, and I think that he's had some big wins. He's just beaten Alexei Oleinik, who is one of my favourite fighters in the UFC with his crazy ground game. But he was able to take Alexei Oleinik down and control him on the ground, even though he's got crazy submissions and he's one of the best submission artists in the UFC. His wrestling was that good to smother someone's jiu-jitsu was that good. So even though Hunt hasn't got that jiu-jitsu, the point I'm trying to make is, when Curtis Blaydes is on top, he's going to control the fight. And it's not easy to stand up, and if Oleinik can't submit him from off his back, then I would imagine maybe the only other person that might have a slight chance would be Verdum. And maybe that fight might happen one day, we'll see. But I think that Curtis Blaydes is quicker, more athletic, younger, hungrier, and I think he's got a couple of paths to victories. So the first potential path to victory, is just using his speed. He's got a good jab. He moves in and out really well. He uses leg kicks well. Hunt also uses leg kicks well. So I think Blaydes does have to be careful of that. I'm sure Hunt split his own shin open, kicking over him in their fight. And even though the gash looked nasty on Hunt's leg from his own kicks, he just kept on absolutely hammering over his legs. He did not give a shit that his own leg was messed up. So those tree trunk legs, they are serious, and Blaydes does have to watch out for that. He needs to either check them or stay out the way of them. But ultimately, like I say, he's a quicker fighter. The first path to victory, just moving in and out, using his speed, using his jab, constantly moving, constantly angling off, circling away from that power shot from Hunt, and taking a decision. Now, his second potential path to victory for me is, like I mentioned it before, the takedowns. I think if he persists with it and does start to tire Hunt out, I think he will get those takedowns eventually. I don't think they'll come right away, though. I think he will have to wear Hunt down a little bit. There's only a few people, like I mentioned, that have been able to take Hunt down regularly. Miocic is one of them. I think he got 6 takedowns against Hunt, which is quite surprising, actually, because although Miocic's wrestling is decent, I'm surprised that he managed to get Hunt down 6 times, and that makes me believe if Miocic can get Hunt down 6 times, and Blaydes has a good chance of getting him down a few times as well, because Blaydes wrestling is pretty good. So that's his second path to victory, just wearing Hunt down in the clinch, not giving Hunt any sort of distance, because without distance Hunt can't land that power shot, he can't land those powerful leg kicks, so it really does take all of Hunt's game away from him, and to be honest with you, it eradicates the only path to victory, in my opinion, that Hunt has. So I think that ultimately what's going to happen, it could be a mix of both path to victories for me. I think the first thing that I mentioned with just being quicker and moving in and out and angling off, using his jabs, quick combinations, 1-2s, in and out, I think that'll be the game plan that Blaydes tries to adopt. But Hunt is the type of fighter that will just always stalk. He'll move forward constantly, slowly, sluggishly, but just trying to get that power shot on you. I think and this is a huge advantage for Blaydes in this spot as well, I think if Hunt gets a little bit too close for comfort, that's when we'll see Blaydes drop down to shoot for the takedown. He does have to be careful of that uppercut, though. He has to make sure that Hunt's not timing that uppercut for when he drops his head to shoot, but it's a good advantage for him, because some fighters, when Hunt gets too close, they're in trouble. What do? If Hunt is able to cut off angles well and start teeing off on them, they're in trouble. But Blaydes has got that extra sort of insurance, if you like, that if he does get himself in a tough spot with Hunt in close or at striking distance, boxing range, he can take him down. And that ultimately, that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, you look back to Hunt's last fight against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis looked absolutely awful, didn't offer anything at all, but yet Hunt didn't either. Hunt had an opportunity to really make himself look great in that fight, even though I think Lewis was a lot more bad than Hunt was good. Hunt had an opportunity to really make people look at that and just think, oh shit, yeah, Hunt was great in that fight, but he didn't at all. And I just think that if Derek Lewis was as quick as what Blaydes is, and has the skill set as what Blaydes had, I just think Hunt would have been sort of a bit stuck. Now, the one thing that I will mention as well, I've seen some pictures of Mark Hunt, and he looks a lot slimmer. It looks like he's lost a lot of weight, just an overall better build. And even though people are like, yeah, he looks phenomenal, he does, but it still doesn't worry me too much, because if he ends up turning up on fight night like that, and he has lost a lot of body weight, I think that's going to probably be the first time in his career, or if not a very long time, that he's fighting at that sort of weight. So, is he going to have adapted to things that come with losing weight, such as slightly quicker speed or slightly less power? I'm not too sure, but I think from Blaydes' point of view, if Hunt comes in a little slimmer, I think Hunt does lose a tiny bit of power, might gain that in speed, that's fine, but he's going to be easier to take down, because ultimately, I don't think his strength he'll not be as powerful as a smaller guy as what he would be with a bigger guy, so I think it'd be a lot easier for Blaydes to take down. So if that is the case, I'm not worried with that either. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but as you can tell, I've bet Curtis Blaydes in this fight. I've got 3.5 units on him at -150. We got some really early odds in the UK from Betfair about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think it was. I bet Curtis Blaydes. Do you know what? I've bet 3 fighters, so that's a spoiler for tonight. And Curtis Blaydes was the risk. The line was the risk of the 3. The other 2, I was really happy with the line. I bet them without any hesitation. But the line with Curtis Blaydes was the risk. I thought at minus 150 it could go either way. Personally, I saw this fight being lined at around minus 200. The rest of the lines have now come out. He did drop down minus 125 momentarily, but then he went up to like, I think he went up to like minus 190. Now he's sort of floating in the range of minus 155 to minus 175. So ultimately, I'm in the ballpark, which is good. I'm happy with the line that I've got. I think there's value in it anyway, regardless if he went lower. Because I think it's a really good value for him. So yeah, 3.5 units on Curtis Blaydes at minus 150. And the next breakdown, we've got Tai Tuivasa versus Cyril. Now, for me, this was a bet that I hit pretty much instantly, without any hesitation. So I've put 4 units on Tai Tuivasa to win at minus 187. The current line is about minus 290, minus 300. So I've absolutely smashed that, and I sort of predicted the line at minus 250, so it's even worse than what I predicted. So great value on that line from the betting perspective, but I just think Cyril is going to get absolutely wrecked in this fight. There's an argument that Tai Tuivasa is still green, meaning that, we still haven't seen enough from him in regards to experience and level of competition to fully make a proper judgment on him as a fighter. And I agree with that to an extent, and I also would have been hesitant to bet him against a far better fight. I didn't bet him against Rashad Coulter in his last fight because I wasn't sure what we're going to see, and he really impressed me in that fight. But yeah, I really don't rate Cyril at all. I think the one thing I will say is I think he's slightly better than what some people give him credit for. Like people are saying that he could potentially be the worst fighter in the UFC, and he shouldn't be there, and he's really not great. But to the guy's credit, when he fights competition at his sort of level, he can be really dominant, and he has shown that. He's 2-2 in the UFC. The 2 that he won were both finishers, one in the first round, one in the second round. Both pretty dominant as well, but they were very low level competition as well. And I actually think that Rashad Coulter, who Tai Tuivasa fought last, is actually a better fighter than what Cyril is. So in my opinion, I think that level of competition wise, Tai Tuivasa has taken a step backwards here. But having said that, it's going to be interesting. The path to victory for Cyril is the takedown. He does look for takedowns. He has got takedowns, and he tends to finish. He tends to look for ground and pound. I know he submitted his last opponent, but he's not a wrestler. Yes, he's got takedowns, but he isn't a wrestler. And one thing to mention straight off the bat is he's 20 pounds lighter than Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa's a pretty big heavyweight. Cyril really isn't. They're going to be the same height. I think they might have a similar reach, but I think maybe a couple of extra inches for Tuivasa. But from an actual size point of view, I think Cyril weighs in at about 244 pounds, whereas Tai Tuivasa, I think, is the heavyweight limit. So, if he's got just over 20 pounds on him, and I think that'll make a lot of difference for the stylistic matchup, because Asker's path to victory is to close distance with him, to get in close against the cage, look for takedowns. He ain't going to power double anybody in the middle of the cage. He isn't going to single leg anybody in the middle of the cage. He hasn't got that. He's, like I say, he's not an out and out wrestler. He's got takedowns, but the takedowns come against the cage. Now, if he does get Tai against the cage, Tai is big and strong, and I think he'll either get his whizzer in and turn him on the cage, or I just think Asker will just have trouble taking him down. And then let's say hypothetically Asker does get him to the ground, I think he's going to have to really, really work for the takedown, which, one, will expend a lot of energy in him doing that at heavyweight, trying to get a guy that is huge, that has weighed in 20 pounds heavier, so who knows what he's going to be on fight night. But then Tai Tuivasa's got a sneaky good get-up game. You know, the beauty of tape with Tai Tuivasa is we've seen him getting taken down. He ended up on the bottom against Rashad Coulter, which, by the way, wasn't a takedown from Rashad Coulter. He tried doing a weird throw that he gets with double underhooks and ended up looking like he pulled guard. But he did the same thing against McSweeney in his fight before that. He got the double underhooks. He tried to throw him, and McSweeney was huge, by the way, way bigger than Tuivasa, who, like I say, is a big heavyweight anyway, but ended up on the bottom. Both times, he managed to get up. He stayed calm. He didn't rush and start panicking or anything like that. He was on his back. He stayed calm. He moved to the right position and then exploded back to his feet when the time was right, wasting zero energy. So, but then in the McSweeney fight, he did get taken down a couple more times. But like I say, McSweeney is a brute force heavyweight. Like, he looks double the size of Cyril Asker. So that was the type of person. That's the type of fighter that will take Tai Tuivasa down, in my opinion. But still, he kept on getting up. He kept on getting back up. He's got a sneaky good get up game. So yeah, that I think if that's Asker's path to victory, sort of debunked in a way. Yes, he might be able to take him down, but if he does, he's going to tire himself out, and Tuivasa will get back up anyway. But then take it just before the takedown, like I say, back into the clinch. Tai Tuivasa's got some nice elbows, some nice knees. He absolutely sparked one of his previous opponents down. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it was to win the Australian Fighting Championships belt, I think it was. And he hit him with a short, close elbow that absolutely put him unconscious. The power that he's got behind his shots is ridiculous. We also saw that in the Rashad Coulter fight. And in Asker's 2 losses in the UFC, he got knocked out by Jared Cannonier at light heavyweight. So that wasn't even against a heavyweight, and Cannonier doesn't hit that hard. We thought he hit hard after he knocked Asker out. We thought he hit really hard, but then seeing Cannonier's fights therefore after, I actually don't think he hits that hard. But he knocked Asker out at the division below, and then he fought Walt Harris, and Walt Harris knocked him out in round 1 as well. But Walt Harris does pack a punch as well, you know, same as Tuivasa. So we've seen Asker get knocked out twice by better competition. I think that's what happens here. I don't even think we're going to need to worry about the takedowns from Asker, because I think Tuivasa will be the aggressor. He'll be the one pressing forward. And whilst he's pressing forward, pushing Asker back with strikes, Asker isn't going to be able to get those takedowns against the cage like he needs. Well, like he needs to. So I just think it's a bad fight for Asker. I don't think he's that great. Yes, Tuivasa's green. We need to see a lot more of him before we see, you know, where his ceiling is. I don't believe people saying that, he's another hype train that's going to be derailed. I don't think anybody sees Tai Tuivasa as a hype train right now. Maybe if he knocks Asker out in spectacular fashion within like a minute, maybe people will start talking. But well, for me, but anyway, personally, I don't see him as a hype train or a future top 5. He's just a fighter that I've seen once in the UFC put on a crazy dominant performance on his debut. He's still unbeaten. He looked pretty good in his regional fights as well. So he's just a fighter that I think is a good fighter that packs a lot of power, and he's got some decent striking for the division against a guy that I really don't rate at all, that's 20 pounds lighter than him, that I think his path to victory gets smothered. And the last thing to mention with Tai Tuivasa is he's been Mark Hunt's training partner for years. So he's been training with one of the best heavyweights for pretty much all of his professional career. And he also trains with Taesan Pedro as well, who is another, you know, great fighter, another big fighter that he can spar with as well. So he's got a great team around him. He's young. He's got a good team around him. He's unbeaten. He's got power. I just think in this fight, he's got the entire package to beat Cyril Asker. So yeah, 4 units on Tai Tuivasa. I think he gets it done by knockout in round 1. I think we'll actually see a replica of the Walt Harris and Asker fight. I think Asker might have a couple of moments just swinging while he's moving backwards, but Tuivasa will catch him with something, and once Asker drops, that'll be all she wrote. So yeah, 4 units, Tai Tuivasa at -187, great line. Yeah, I think that'll come in. And then moving on to the last breakdown, the last bet on the card, I've got, it's the fight with Jake Matthews versus Li Jingliang. Now, at first, you could think this might be quite a close fight, but then the more you actually dissect it, the more it's not as close as what you think. So, just straight off the bat, I've got 2.5 units on Li Jingliang at -120. Again, that was one of the lines that, without hesitation, hopped on straight away. He's in the region of about -180 now in the UK. He did get to over -200, sort of settled around -180. I do predict that once more bookies come out with the odds, that'll probably settle at about -200 again. So again, absolutely smash the line. There's no way that's coming down to anything close to -120, which is what I got it at, and rightly so as well, because I think that this is the fight that we see Jake Matthews really get exposed. So it's his second fight at welterweight. His last fight at welterweight was against Bojan Velichkovic, and it was a controversial decision. He won the fight by split decision. A lot of people think that he didn't win. Personally, I don't think he won, but it was close. It was close, and I could appreciate that it go either way. But he basically won that fight by getting takedowns. Velichkovic was getting the better of him on the feet, really putting it on him. I think he had him hurt at one point as well, but ultimately Velichkovic didn't really have any answer for his takedowns and for the ground game. Allowed Jake Matthews to control on the ground for lengthy periods of time. So that's what the judges must have seen. Now, if that was in Australia again, and we're in Australia now for this fight, so the one apprehension with this fight, and it's the reason why I've gone 2.5 units and not 3.5 or 4 units, is just in case it goes to a decision of that hometown cooking, what the phrase we like to use when judges are scoring it favourably for the hometown fighter. So that's the reason why I've not gone massively heavy on this, but I am confident that it won't get to the decision anyway. I think that, I know that all fights start on the feet, so Jake Matthews is going to have to stand with Li Jingliang. Now, Li Jingliang's got wrestling, and pretty decent wrestling as well. He's been in there with Bobby Nash, who's a D1 wrestler in his own right. So, he's been in. He has had the experience of being in there with good wrestlers, and he's, like I say, he's a good wrestler himself. He's got takedowns. I think he might have even took Bobby Nash down as well. But I don't see him using the takedowns in this fight. I see him using his wrestling from a defensive point of view. So if Matthews does try and close distance, get a hold of him and try and get him down to the mat, which I ultimately think Matthews will try that, and he has to try that, otherwise he loses the fight. But I think this fight ends reasonably early, so I think that Matthews might try and get a couple of takedowns very early on, but Lee will use his defensive wrestling to stay vertical. And then I think once Matthews starts realising that these takedowns aren't going to come that easily, I think he'll realise that he has to try and strike with Lee, and that'll be the beginning of the end for him, because when he starts striking with Lee, if Velichkovic hurt Matthews, Lee's going to knock him out, and I think that's what will happen. Lee's got really good. He showed really quick speed against Zach Otto in his last fight, where he knocked him out. Again, an impressive win. I was actually unsure on that fight which way it would go as a whole, but I thought he would go to a decision and someone would take it. But Li Jingliang came out and just looked absolutely phenomenal. Quick hands, power, knocked him out, was calm. Just everything was just on point for him, and I think that fight, sometimes you see that with some fights where a fighter will get that good win and they just turn that corner and really start to put something together in regards to consecutive wins, and I think that's what we're going to see here. I think Li Jingliang's going to come out full of confidence. I think he's going to be able to stuff takedowns using his strength and his wrestling ability to keep vertical. He's going to push Matthews away, and he's going to land a combination that's going to drop Matthews, and when it drops him, like I've said for the previous breakdown with Tuivasa and Cyril, once he drops him, that'll be the beginning of the end, and that'll be when Lee jumps on top of him and scores the TKO victory with the ref dragging him off him. So yeah, I've got 2.5 units on Li Jingliang. I think he'll get the knockout in round 1. I just don't think Matthews is that great at all. And just another point to mention regarding who he trains with, he's still training with his dad, I think, in his home gym or shed or whatever it is. I just think that Jake Matthews could have a much higher ceiling, but he has to move away from training with his dad in that gym or whatever he calls it, because he's just not going to evolve. He's not going to get any better. And we saw that with Sage Northcutt as well, just really digressing here. He trained with his dad, didn't have a good, he wasn't having great camps. It was really holding him back. Now he's moved over to Uriah Faber at Team Alpha Male, and even in his last fight, you can really see the improvements in such a short space of time that a good gym really makes to a young prospect. And that's what Jake Matthews needs to do, and until he does that, this will always be holding him back. Yes, he got past Bojan Velichkovic, who is a very, very average at best welterweight in the UFC. That was even a controversial win. Some people think that he didn't win. So when he's scraping past your Bojan Velichkovic's, I really don't think it, Lee's a huge step up from Velichkovic, and I think it'll show on the night. So yeah, 2.5 units on Li Jingliang at -120. And that does it for the full breakdown. So jumping straight into the quickfire round, and this next one might be not so quickfire actually, because it's just a really intriguing fight. We've got Yoel Romero against Luke Rockhold. It was originally supposed to be Robert Whittaker against Luke Rockhold, but staph infection pulled Robert Whittaker out, which I was gutted about. Just FYI, I had 4 units on Whittaker at -110, and you heard that right, 10 to 11 if you're in the UK, -110. Unbelievable price that Paddy Power dropped really early on. I know a lot of people in the UK hit those odds. I think I actually broke those odds as well out to MMA Twitter, to the UK fans. So a lot of people hit that, and unfortunately they're odds that we'll just never ever get again. So even if Rockhold wins and Whittaker rematches, we're never going to be blessed with those again. So it's a bit frustrating, but it happens. But anyway, Romero stepped up. This is a great fight, and this is a fight that I also cannot imagine ever betting on. And if you're listening and you've got an edge to this fight, so much so that you're going to put money on it, then you're a better man than I am, because I've been over and over in my head with this fight so many times, and I can't decide. I just really cannot be definitive in my pick. So there's just path to victories for both guys, legit path to victories, and also legit path to losing as well. So from Yoel Romero's point of view, his path to victory, plain and simple, catch Rockhold early on. Rockhold got knocked out by Bisping. As Rockhold's chin completely gone, who knows, he'd get it with a few hard punches from Branch, but Branch doesn't hit very hard in general. So has his chin gone? We don't know. It's a red flag. It could be, it might not be, I don't know. I can't answer that question. But Romero hits fucking hard anyway, whether it be a punch or a kick or a flying knee. Whatever he throws hard enough to knock anybody out. So whether Rockhold's chin has gone or not, that's still very, very possible that Rockhold knocks him out. But then, does Rockhold go too hard in the earlier rounds, which in my opinion might not be a bad idea if he wants to actually definitively win this fight? Because if he doesn't knock him out and it goes a stretch, I could see Rockhold picking him apart. But then if Yoel Romero goes hard at the start trying to get that knockout, he's definitely going to gas come like mid to late third round, and then Rockhold, if he's won one of the earlier 2 rounds, then he's probably going to win the fight down the stretch to the judges' decisions. So we don't know how that's going to pan out. And then from Rockhold's point of view, he's one of the best topside grapplers in the UFC. Great ground and pound, great submission. Submission's great, transitioning from position to position to get into a dominant position to finish his fighter. Does always look to finish on top as well. So that begs the question, can Rockhold take Romero down? I'm not sure he can. Romero's huge. He's powerful, he's strong. Can Rockhold trip him to the mat? Can Romero spring straight back up? These are all questions that I'm asking out here just randomly, but I can't answer them. You know, we just, in my head anyway, we just don't know. And then if Rockhold can't take him down and Yoel Romero can't knock Rockhold out, we've got a bit of a stalemate. Then what happens on the feet? Does Rockhold gas? Probably not. Does Romero gas? It's a possibility. But if Romero gasses, what round does he gas in? Does he gas late in the third? And if so, has he won the first 2 rounds? And is Rockhold going to win that third and then potentially 4th and 5th? Then is it a split decision? Listen, I think you're getting the hint of what I'm trying to say here. It's just, I just can't see an edge in this fight. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. But ultimately, I'm not going to sit on the fence for you. I'm going to give you a pick. I think that it's going to go to Luke Rockhold. I just think that if he can't get him down if he can't get him on the mat, I think he's got the better, quicker in-out striking on the feet, where he can stay on the outside if he wanted to and use his kicks at range rather than getting into boxing range, which would favour Romero. I think he's got the slightly better fight IQ as well, especially after getting knocked out by Bisping. I think he'll have taught himself a few hard lessons after that. So ultimately I will side with Rockhold, but seriously, in my opinion, sit back, grab a cold one and enjoy this fight for what it is, because it is going to be a good fight. It's going to be so intriguing. It's almost like a chess match. I really can't wait for it. Like I say, really not sure, but I think Luke Rockhold's going to win. Now moving on to the next one. This will be a bit more quick fire. So we've got Taesan Pedro against Saparbek Safarov. Now I do heavily favour Taesan Pedro in this fight, and I could have got him at -187 when those early lines came out that I've already spoken about. I think he's about -250 now, so he has shot up in a similar way to what Tuivasa did. But the reason why I didn't actually bet, I mean, I think Taesan Pedro is definitely the more skilled fighter. He's definitely the more well-rounded fighter. He's going to be at home, so that's an advantage. Like I've already mentioned, he trains with Tuivasa, who will be a good training partner for him. He trains with Mark Hunt, who will be a good training partner for him. So yeah, I really do favour Taesan Pedro. So you're probably thinking, well, you know, why didn't you bet it? And the reason why is, with Safarov, you saw this in the Gian Villante fight, and I actually bet Gian Villante that night, so I watched tape on Safarov prior to betting him. And even though it was short notice and he gassed, so you have got to take that into consideration with Safarov, that, you know, he might not gas as easy because, you know, like I say, I'm sure it was less than a week's notice against Gian Villante. But I just think that, well, I don't think that, I know that Safarov's wild, he's crazy, he throws power, he throws it in bunches, and Taesan Pedro's going to have to weather a storm here. So if you bet him, you know, I think he's going to win for you. I think he'll cash the bet, but he's going to have to weather an early storm from Safarov, because Safarov comes out like a bull, and like I say, he throws wild punches, and if he catches Taesan Pedro, believe me, it can knock him out. So when I'm putting my money down on a fighter, there's a few things that always scare me off a little bit, like someone fighting a Dagestani-born Russian, or someone that gasses after a minute. One of the things that I really don't like betting on is banking on my fighter weathering a storm. I mean, if he doesn't have to weather a storm and he goes there and puts it on Safarov, then fair play, easy cash, and well done to everyone that's bet Safarov. But I just think a storm's going to have to be weathered, and I don't like playing with that sort of fire. So yeah, I think ultimately Taesan Pedro will weather that storm. I think Safarov will gas, and I think Pedro could knock him out, maybe late second round, early third round. In fact, no, I'll go second round. I don't think it'll go 3 rounds this. Either Safarov knocks him out in round 1 or gets knocked out himself after he's gassed in round 2. But yeah, just the weathering of the storm has put me off betting this. So Taesan Pedro by knockout round 2. So next quick fire, we've got Damien Brown versus Dong-Hyun Kim. The odds have come out for this a few hours ago. Dong-Hyun Kim, I think, is a -140 favourite. Damien Brown, to come back on him, is +115. I think Brown's a decent underdog in this. It's not something that I'll ever play, but Brown is ultimately my pick to win. And the reason why is because, and this is also my prediction for fight of the night as well, because Damien Brown is such an exciting fighter to watch. He goes out there, he brawls, he puts it all on the line for us, for every MMA fan watching at home, for our entertainment. He goes out there and he leaves it all in the fucking cage. He's an absolute warrior. And if you can say one thing about Damien Brown, is he will invite that brawl. Because of his own fighting style, he's almost like a magnet. It almost rubs off on his opponent. So even when he fought Frank Camacho's a striker, but he's not really, like, he's an exciting fighter and he's won so many fight of the nights already in the UFC. But I wouldn't say he's a wild brawler, but Damien Brown brought that side out of him. And with Dong-Hyun Kim, we know that brawler is inside of him with his fight against Marco Polo Reyes. And we should all remember that fight pretty well, because it was an absolute crazy war, back and forth, knockdowns. You're thinking the fight's going to end, and then it doesn't, and then you think it's going to end again, and then it doesn't, and then, it was awesome. So we know that that's in Dong-Hyun Kim. He's definitely got that side to him. In his last couple of fights, he hasn't been as bad as what he was in that Polo Reyes fight. But that's because he's been fighting fighters that isn't going to bring that side out of him. Damien Brown is. I think he does bring that side out of Dong-Hyun Kim. So then you're asking yourself, well, at this point, when they're both brawling, who's the most durable? And I think Damien Brown is. Damien Brown took some ridiculously hard shots from Frank Camacho that, in my opinion, hits harder than Dong-Hyun Kim. And Dong-Hyun Kim also showed vulnerability to himself in the Polo Reyes fight, because he started on top and then ended up getting finished and getting knocked out. So he's already lost a durability battle against somebody. So yeah, I just favour Damien Brown to be the more durable fighter. I think it goes to a decision. I actually don't think Damien Brown knocks him out. I think he just does more over 3 rounds. I think they'll both be absolutely knackered at the end. It'll be fight of the night, and Brown will have his hand lifted. So next we've got Rob Wilkinson against Israel Adesanya, and this Adesanya kid, I've not heard of him prior to this card, but I've seen a few clips of him recently, and he looks like a really exciting prospect. He's 11-0. It's his debut. Admittedly, he hasn't fought really anybody that great. The only name that most people will recognise is Melvin Gillard, but listen, everyone knocks Melvin Gillard out at the minute. And then you go to Rob Wilkinson, and he was 11-0 before his last fight, where he got knocked out by CR Bahadazada, which is one of the hardest names to pronounce. So he went 2 rounds with CR and got knocked out there. So really, for Adesanya, this is probably his toughest fight, especially from level of competition point of view, and I'm not really sure how it goes, to be honest. I am tending to lean to Adesanya to get his win and make it 12-0, stay unbeaten. He's just got that really exciting style where he's knocking people out, flash knockouts as well. So like kicking a front kick to the face, knocking someone out, or an elbow and completely knocking them out. He does look like he's got a lot of power. So I think, bear in mind, we saw CR didn't just knock Rob Wilkinson out, he had him hurt quite a bit in that fight, if I remember rightly, and he eventually scored the knockout just because of the accumulation of punishment that Rob Wilkinson took. So that could have also took a little bit out of Rob Wilkinson's chin and durability as well. So yeah, I mean, it's not a confident pick, and he has opened up at like -300 as well, Adesanya. So the bookies are confident that he's going to get the win. But based on that line and the fact that, I mentioned being green very earlier on, this dude is definitely green. It's his debut in the UFC. I won't bet against him, but I certainly won't bet for him, ultimately meaning that's why it's a pass for me. But I think Adesanya will knock him out. So moving on to the next fight, it's actually quite interesting, this one as well. We've got Jeremy Kennedy against Alexander Volkanovski now. Volkanovski is just this short little powerhouse that's got takedowns, that's got power, good combinations, and I think that if he was fighting somebody that didn't have takedowns as well, he would just walk through them. But Jeremy Kennedy's got some really good trip takedowns, and he tends to use pretty much the same takedown in most of his fights, where he's clinched up against the cage and he'll hook one of his legs behind his opponent's legs, and he'll just throw the leg out and get the trip takedown. And he seems to get that takedown quite a lot. It's sort of his go-to takedown. But I just think that in this fight it's not going to be enough for Volkanovski. Now, the one downside to Volkanovski is he always starts great for definitely the first round, at least half of the second round, sometimes takes the second half of the second round as well. But he tends to let fighters back in late in the fight, is what I'm trying to say. So he'll start off strong and really fade, but not fade as in getting tired and gassing out fade. Just letting his opponent really start. I don't know whether his opponents just figure him out towards the end of every fight. Maybe too much of a coincidence, but maybe he just takes his foot off the gas, which I potentially think might be the issue. But that's basically what happens. He starts off strong, doesn't end so strong. Jeremy Kennedy could take advantage of that, and I think he will. I think he will win. He will win the last round, but I think Volkanovski will win the first two. I don't think anybody gets a finish, so I'm going for Volkanovski to win by a unanimous decision. Next fight, we've got Jussier Formiga against Ben Nguyen. Now, the odds have dropped earlier on, and these both opened at -15, which has surprised a few people, I think, but it didn't necessarily surprise me. Now, I thought Jussier Formiga would open at around -175, but that's just the only reason I thought that wasn't from the matchup point of view. It was more of people know Formiga is highly ranked, he's an obvious talent, he's a household name, whereas Nguyen, people will look at his record and think, oh God, he's lost to Louis Smolka, who, we know that he's not that great now. We thought he was at the time, may well have been at the time, but whatever's happened has happened. And, Nguyen doesn't really have that sort of name power as what Formiga has. But from a stylistic point of view, I actually agree with the odds. I think -115 pick'em is probably about right. And the reason I say that is Jussier Formiga is an absolute machine on the ground. His grappling is high level. If he gets Nguyen on the ground and flat on his back, if he settles on top of Nguyen, he will submit him. I've got absolutely no doubts about that whatsoever. But the problem is, Formiga doesn't have great wrestling, so actually getting Nguyen down to the ground might be tough, because Nguyen's got really good scrambles, and we saw that in the Tim Elliott fight, and even parts of the Smolka fight as well. He never really settles on his back, at least straight away anyway. He's got good scrambles, he's quick to get back to his feet, he's got some decent sweeps as well. But I think potentially that could keep him upright against Formiga. These are his path to victories. But then on the feet, just like Formiga's got the obvious advantage on the mat, if he settles on top of Nguyen, Nguyen's got the obvious advantage over Formiga, and Nguyen will light him up on the feet, and I'm sure of that. So ultimately, I do think Formiga gets him down. I think that he'll shoot for some sort of takedown or some trip or a throw, and I think Nguyen will scramble. But I think in that scramble, Formiga will adjust mid-scramble and end up getting that position on top where he does settle, and I think he'll get the submission. But absolutely would not surprise me at all if Nguyen just stayed on the outside and lit him up. for 3 rounds. I'm not sure if he gets the finish. But yeah, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. My pick's Formiga, but I'm not confident. Then next fight we've got Ross Pearson against Mizuto Hirota. Both guys probably at the end of the career in my opinion. Both guys aren't that great either. I think, in fact, Hirota was one of Volkanovski's previous opponents that started to come back later in the fight, and he did look good at the end of that Volkanovski fight. So Volkanovski's head and shoulders above Pearson. I know MMA math never really works out that way, but personally I won't bet this. It's going to be a fight that's really, really close to call. I think Pearson is a favourite in this fight as well. I'm just looking at the odds now, and Ross Pearson, yeah, it's a minus 150 favourite, so the lines aren't as close in my opinion as what they should be. But yeah, I think my pick's going to go with Hirota. I think he can grind out a 29-28 or a split decision win. Ultimately, that is how close the fight's going to be, so definitely not betting. But my prediction is Hirota to win by decision. Then next fight we've got Teruto Ishihara against Jose Alberto Quinonez El Tico, and I think El Tico's going to win. He looked great in his last fight. He had power, he had quick strikes, he managed to stay vertical as well, stay on his feet, where he's going to have the advantage. Whereas Teruto Ishihara is just coming off a win against Rolando D that would have been a draw without Rolando D hitting him with one of the most god-awful low blow shots I've ever seen in my life, and if you watch that back it'll probably make you feel a little bit sick. And then if you really slowly watch it with volume up and you hear the crash on the cup, it looks horrible. But anyway, Rolando D's not that great of a fighter, and the fact that he started off badly against Ishihara seems to recently have a problem with finishing guys. Like, he had Rolando D hurt a few times, just couldn't put him away, and I don't think Rolando D's that tough. But then Rolando D came back into the fight, and like I say, I think he would have got a draw because Ishihara 10-8'd him in the first round, and then Rolando D would have won round 2 and 3, but I think it was the third round, he got a point taken off him for... in fact, he might have had 2 points taken off him. I can't remember how it worked out, but anyway, it should have been a draw. But Ishihara ended up winning because of the illegal shots. So yeah, it didn't look really great for him. And like I say, I quite like Quinonez here, and I've just had a look at the lines, and I saw earlier on that I couldn't see any lines out for these guys. I don't know why the bookies haven't lined this up yet. So unfortunately, I have no idea really what to make of it. Personally, I would line it about minus 200, minus 225 to Quinonez favourite. If Quinonez is an underdog in this fight, I'm not going to hit it. I've got my bets on the card, but if you are wanting an underdog and he ends up as an underdog, that's probably going to be the best underdog of the night, in my opinion. I think he'll beat Ishihara down the stretch. I think he'll win a decision. So then, final fight of the card. Well, the first fight of the card, final fight of the quickfire, is Luke Jumeau against Daichi Abe. And I really am not a fan of Luke Jumeau. I think is actually how you pronounce his name. Daichi Abe looked okay in his last fight against Lim, but you know, in my opinion, I think he probably lost that fight. He only won it because he got knocked down very late in the third round, a round that I think he'd lost. And the reason why I was a bit annoyed is because I didn't have any money on it, but I just thought that it was 1-1 going into the third round, and for 4 minutes 45 seconds Lim was winning the round, and one knockdown has completely changed the judge's decision to give it to Daichi Abe. But you know, take nothing away from him, he looked quick, he looked sharp, he looked powerful, but I just think Luke Jumeau's going to get the fight he wants here, with a fight that's going to stay standing, and I think he'll just take a sloppy decision. I don't think it'll be a great fight. Hope I'm wrong, really hope I'm wrong. But yeah, Luke Jumeau by a close decision. So that does it for this podcast for UFC 221. The one thing I would like to say though, just before I go, is I have said over previous podcasts and on Twitter that I've got some, I've had a couple of meetings regarding my website, and I'm going to have some news and announcements and stuff. So I'd just like to say from my side of from my side of things, if you didn't see it, I did tweet it out the other day, but I'm really happy to announce that Newsome MMA will be working alongside Heavy Duty Fight Management. We're going to be producing a lot of awesome fresh content on the Newsome MMA website at newsomemma.co.uk. Heavy Duty manages fighters such as UFC lightweight prospect Mark Jacasey. They've got UFC light heavyweight prospect in Alexander Rakic. They've got KSW title contender and ex-UFC fighter Scott Askham. They've also got some great regional fighters as well, such as Shoaib Youssef, Azzy Thomas, Yannick Bahati. So anybody that's watching fights regionally will definitely know them guys. So they're really big company, and they've also got their own MMA apparel as well, so selling their MMA gear, and I'm just excited to see what the future brings with them. So just keep your eyes on the website, keep your eyes on my Twitter, which is at Newsome_MMA. Again, my website being newsomemma.co.uk. I can't really talk too much right now into what we've got coming in the pipeline, but it is going to be like a snowball effect. So it's going to be little things to start with, and then the more and more the ball gets rolling, the more I'll start feeding through. But we've got some awesome ideas for content, some really niche stuff that isn't out, as from my knowledge anyway, isn't out on any other MMA website. So I can't really talk too much more than that, because it's niche stuff, fresh content, and I want it to be brand new and be nothing else like that out there. So like I say, just keep your eyes peeled. I'm really excited, and being on board with such a great company as well, that's got already huge aspirations and really stamping themselves in the world of MMA. It's really good, and it's really fun to work with these guys, and I'm looking forward to it. So just a quick rundown finally before I go of my bets, in case you missed it. We've got Curtis Blaydes, we've got 3.5 units on him at -150. I've got 4 units on Tuivasa at -187, and then I've got Li Jingliang, 2.5 units on him at -120. Again, if you've missed anything in this podcast, or you want to revisit any of my breakdowns, I've got all my breakdowns on my website. The page is newsomemma.co.uk/bet-picks. I've got all the breakdowns for this card. I've also got a load of future bets on there as well. I put 3 bets on for future cards this week as well, so go and check them out. And follow me on Twitter at Newsome_MMA. That's where I do all my talking. I'm on Facebook as well, again /Newsome MMA, but I really do all my MMA chatting on Twitter. And like I say, if you ever want to chat about anything MMA, I'm always happy to talk. I'm always in my DMs. I'll always reply to you. I'm not, I've not got an ego and think, I'll not get back to him. I'll always reply to anybody that wants to talk MMA with me. It's my passion. It's what I love, and it's what we all love. So, please like, subscribe, comment on the video if you wish. But ultimately, like I say, I'll do most of my talking on Twitter if you want to go back and forth on any fight. Always love a good debate. And thank you. We'll see you next week.